I'm looking forward to today's conversation with another executive coach to help you to learn more about how to succeed in this growing field. Today, I'm happy to welcome Ken Gonyer to the show. He is the lead consultant for Reliance Leadership Strategies, providing executive coaching and consulting for CEOs and C-suite executives in banking and finance. Before becoming a coach, Ken was the CEO of the nation's largest wholesale distributor of inspirational books. He also spent 15 years as an executive in the banking industry. Ken has co-authored 2 books on family finance with his wife, Karen, with whom he lives in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. Well, Ken, I really appreciate you spending some time with us today to answer some questions about your business as an executive coach and consultant.
It's my pleasure to be here, Michael.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to just jump right in and ask you the first question. Based on your introduction, we know that you were a successful CEO. So my question is, why did you leave the job of being a CEO and decide to go into executive coaching?
Maybe you remember the pandemic that started in 2020. That motivated a lot of changes in a lot of people's lives. For me, it meant the necessity to restructure the company that I was leading radically. And we did that through 2020 and 2021. I got to the place where it was ready to launch and realized that the best person to lead had to be not maybe a visionary, but an operational expert, an operational expert. And I think that wasn't for me. It wasn't the best thing for me. So I actually stepped down voluntarily and asked someone who I thought would be great at it to take over. And at that time, I had the opportunity to search for a new position. I was grateful to find one right away with the Reliance Leadership Strategies. The CEO of the company essentially said, "What would you like to do most?" And I said, "Well, not be a CEO probably, but be an executive coach." And so that opportunity opened. I got trained with the Center for Executive Coaching and began about a year and a half ago as a full-time coach.
Interesting. Yeah, I do remember 2020 and the pandemic and how it turned the world upside down and changed a lot of people's lives in the direction of their careers. So then you've been in business now for about a year and a half as an executive coach. What has been most rewarding for you since making that transition?
Something happened about a week or two into the coaching business that has repeated itself a number of times. So I would get an email a day or two after one of our sessions, and the subject line say something like "coaching win" or "we did it." And I'd get these reports from the CEOs that I was working with, people who on the surface come across as extremely capable and confident, but they needed help. And they were so grateful that they'd come back between sessions and tell me, "This worked, this worked." And it was, of course, their work that I helped them figure out how to do. But that is the most rewarding part, is sort of vicariously succeeding through these CEOs' jobs and watching them overcome some of those obstacles that they'd faced.
So it seems that you're targeting CEOs with your work. What is unique about coaching CEOs versus other leaders at different levels in the organization?
From my own experience as a CEO, and then learning this from some of the others that I've worked with, the role is lonely. It's isolated. It really is lonely at the top. And part of that derives from just the job itself, having a board of directors to report to, those above you, and usually an executive team that you would be leading, neither of which are really great places to bring your questions, or they're not sounding boards. And the executive coach can be that sounding board, a confidential place to try out ideas, to really describe how hard things are on them, to then face that and move beyond it. So the CEOs that I work with are probably the most human that they'll ever be during the coaching calls. Then they might have to put on a bit of a mask and go back out and charge forth. But that is what is so different than, say, working with a middle manager or someone who probably doesn't have to be that invulnerable.
So this makes me think of a different type of question, Ken, that I've had with some of the leaders that I've worked with, whether it be in a coaching context or a team facilitation context, that I think it's harder to be vulnerable the higher up you go in an organization. Would you agree with that?
It's what I've seen and what I've experienced. However, in my own job as a CEO, it was when I told the truth. And my truth at the time was, I don't know what to do with this pandemic. At that time, I opened up the door to the help that I did have available in my board chair. So these are choices that I think people make to guard and hide themselves, to be sure that they don't somehow make themselves not only vulnerable, but potentially someone that can be attacked or hurt. If you're confident enough, you can show your true self to someone that's trusted, like that board chair or a spouse or maybe a pastoral religious leader, someone in your life that you can tell the truth about. But it is harder as you move up to be vulnerable and to expose weaknesses. However, when they don't get exposed, they don't go away. They don't become strengths. So I've definitely encouraged my CEO clients to find that place beyond me to express that and be real.
When you work with a leader, how much of what you do is coaching versus consulting or advising?
True confession. Advising is incredibly tempting, especially because I work with people in the same field that I've had 20 plus years of experience. And I do know some things that they might want to know. I have had experiences that they might find interesting. But I think it is Michael Bungay Stanier who said, your advice isn't half as good as you think it is. That's usually the truth. He's an author of The Coaching Habit and has helped me to get real about that. So the power of coaching really is in asking questions and doing it the way we learned with the ICF standards. However, people do ask for advice. They ask for you to help them choose. And the simple method that I've found helpful to avoid going there right away is to essentially exhaust them by making them tell me, what else can you do? What else could you do? Or just say, what else? And although it can be frustrating for the client, they get it that I'm not going to give them an answer. Sometimes I do say, if I gave you advice, you wouldn't want it or you wouldn't take it. But I don't even know if that's true. So it's not what I usually say. It's typically that I think you have the answer and you know more about this than I do. So it's a percentage, it's probably 10% of the conversation after we've gone there that will come back around and I'll say, a few thoughts I have are these, and take them or leave them.
Right, excellent. I think that's good advice for coaches, this idea of exhausting your client, because I have seen at times, and I perform as a mentor coach as well as a coach. And so I observe coaching sessions. And of course, I'm also reflective of my own coaching sessions. And I must admit that there are times where I don't exhaust my client, that I could ask what else one more time rather than accept that this is enough and we can move on or choose one of the ideas that they've come up with. So I really like that idea, Ken, of asking them more and more to come up, because then what else is the value of executive coaching but to push our client to go beyond their comfort zone in terms of their own creative ability to solve these challenges, or at least come up with ideas on how to resolve these challenges.
Yeah, that's the magic. And that's what made me so excited when I first got a coach. In fact, I recently said to my coach, I love you. And my I love you was that he just made me find the answer to something, an intractable problem that I came with simply asking, what would you do? And he wouldn't tell me. But I got to the end, knew what to do, and just did feel something like love at that moment.
Yeah, and an immense sense of relief too, because I've seen that in clients when they actually come in not knowing and leave knowing and feel a heck of a lot better
Yeah.
after that time. And that's why sometimes coaching is the best hour of the day. So then I want to shift gears a little bit, Ken. I know that part of the work that you do is strategic planning. Are there certain times of the year when clients are looking for strategic planning assistance, or is this a year-round opportunity?
When you come to the strategic planning time of the year, it's usually the final fiscal quarter when the boards get together. But that's way too late to have had the conversation to get the opportunity to facilitate. So since most fiscal years do end either September or September 30 or the end of the calendar year, at least for my group, the early spring is the time when those conversations start. And they actually haven't started mostly from, hey, do you need a facilitator? They've started with the question, how are you doing on your strategic priorities from your last strategic planning? Typically, people are having trouble. Even by March, they've realized, I don't know if we had the right priorities or if we have the right strategy. The tactics we're taking don't seem to be taking us where we want to. So it's a coaching question, really, that leads to an opportunity to describe, in my case, a very simple pattern for strategic planning facilitation that can, typically it takes them down from too many goals and priorities down to 3. And I did learn this at the Center for Executive Coaching, and it works really well for about any size organization, from a couple that owns a bookstore to a large company or a large nonprofit.
You mentioned the CEC and this idea of having 3 priorities. And when I teach on that topic, we often have a debate around whether it's possible to have just 3 priorities. And sometimes we'll flex a little bit and say, well, maybe 3 to 5. But in my experience, Ken, I found that organizations go way beyond that number in terms of setting priorities and then adding on throughout the year. Since you've been in the seat of the CEO, why does this happen?
I have thought about this as I helped with the restructure of the company that I was working with. A new method for them was to consolidate vision and mission related priorities at the top. So the executive team has those 3, but they're very broad, and then discuss cascading these down to the next level. The term of cascading mission simply means, say you are the VP of finance, and so you're asking the question of, among those 3 big picture priorities, what is my part? And how does that cascade down to me? You then can clarify specifics at that point for your finance department and ask, where would it go from here? Say you're the VP, what does it mean for the controller or the accounts payable or accounts receivable, whoever? So this waterfall effect continues on down. And so in the end, if you seriously laid out all the priorities that every individual was aiming for, it would be dozens to hundreds, but all of them relate. All of them flow back to the main 3 things that if you don't do, you won't win. That's how I think it should work. And the problem I see is people try to just fit all that into what the board is looking at or what the CEO is looking at. And that's too much. You just need to have something broader, but very concise as far as what it will look like, how it relates to your vision, how it relates to your mission. I hope that's clear, but it's definitely worked in our organization.
It is clear, Ken. It does seem that what you're saying, though, is it requires intense discipline and commitment to have a short list of priorities, because there are many ideas. That doesn't mean that we should turn those ideas into priorities this year.
Yeah, and time-bound goals are probably wise. In other words, figure out what can I do this year? What can I do in 5 years as an organization? I think the worst problem than getting confused or losing discipline is not leading from the top down. And so the CEO typically, or the board chair and the CEO, need to be essentially harping on these three things. And you could go to 5 if you can handle it, but 3 seems like it's actually cascades down to quite a lot. And so then you take this from the top and you're reminding people of the goal. You're asking accountability questions to see how their work comes back up, filters back up to help meet the goal. It does require discipline, but it requires leadership about as much as anything.
Yeah, very, very good. Thank you, Ken. I recently read an article about the remaking of Hershey's. It's written by the CEO, and she had very few objectives. We want to be a leader in the snacking. That's not just candy and chocolate. We wanted to increase profitability in Asia, and I think there may have been one or two more, and that's it. Hershey's a pretty big company, so if she's able to do it, then other companies of smaller sizes should be able to too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you think about what that must have meant in their monthly or weekly or however they do their management team meetings, they're comparing all the littler stuff that they're doing to say something like, is this snacking? Does this impact Asia? What are we doing in Canada?
Right.
Some of those questions.
Yeah, and as you said, it cascades down. There were many projects and initiatives below those, but it was clear, where is the company heading? And I think, as you said, that's leadership, showing where the company is heading, having a short list that then people can work towards in a unified fashion. So then let's go to the business of creating business. You gave us some insight as to how you wade into the strategic planning waters, with starting with just a coaching question around priority activation. How do you generate business opportunities for yourself?
I'll start with the strategic planning. If you think about what it would take to completely activate that strategic plan with just 3 priorities, it's a great opportunity to offer coaching to the CEO, to the C-suite, to VPs, whatever. And that kind of coaching will actually help them stick to it. So that's certainly a leader. When you are facilitating and teaching a strategic planning idea, then you make yourself available to help them act it out, live it out. More often for me, the attempts as building the business have been around speaking, writing, publishing, social media. I say attempts because recently my coach asked me to name all of my clients and how they got there. And all of them were referrals from someone that I knew or someone that has worked with me. Literally none have come from social media, LinkedIn. This could work for others better, but at least for me, part of my brand is the ability to connect with people one-on-one. And so the referrals are personal. And I've even been told to just stop worrying about the other stuff, worry about networking. And I wish I loved the science of networking a little more. I just like to get to know people. So I am learning But that is how I build the business. And learning now to ask a great client after we've established some wins, just to say something simple like, it's been so great to work with you. If there's anyone else in your circle that you think would enjoy working with me, would you let me know? Or could we do a call to introduce them? I'd love to get to know them. It's a slight ask, but not so much that it feels like you're making them do your marketing for you.
And you've started to get more comfortable incorporating that into your conversation with outgoing clients.
Once I feel that they could write that email that says coaching win or we did it.
Yeah.
One time I knew it was okay when I was at a conference and this client introduced me from a distance to her colleague and said, "There's my Ken." And I don't know if I want to be her Ken, but she was so happy to see me. We'd never met in person. It was always on Zoom. And the emotional capital, just the value that she got out of our relationship was so high that she instantly wanted to show me around as her coach, for one thing. But on the other hand, she wanted her colleagues to experience the good that she had. So once there's value, yes, I wouldn't want to do it right up front. Or if someone's saying, well, I have a coaching client right now that's his word is skeptical. He's skeptical about whether this is going to be helpful, which is fine. We'll find out together, but I won't ask him until I'm sure that he's confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is fascinating to hear that you actually went down the list and realized that every client you have came through your network. And I have frequently said to new coaches, I think your fastest way to a new client is in-person interaction. Of course, that was pre-pandemic, and now it might not be in person. Maybe it's virtual, but it is human-to-human contact is what I believe is your fastest way to your first client. It isn't through your blog. It isn't through your social media posts. Those are great ways to expose yourself to a greater audience. And over time, those could be attractive to potential clients. But initially, I definitely think it's through networking. And if referrals are your greatest source of incoming business opportunities, then it affords you the opportunity to focus more on the value you provide to existing clients, rather than spending lots of time trying to market yourself out to the world of strangers.
I think I do see value in continuing to write and speak just for credibility, because I'm not a known entity all around everywhere. Another aspect of the networking that's more valuable is the fact that at least in my firm, the goal is high-end coaching. So $50,000 a year type of packages, which is asking for a lot of value. Now, I don't get all of those. There are people that are paying $1,000 a month or something like that, depending, especially in the nonprofit credit union world, there's less of a budget there. But when I ask for that kind of a fee, they can't be sure that I'm worth it until they've met me and put me through the paces. Just reading the articles or seeing the social media stuff is not going to encourage them to part with that much money every month. So you're right. It is a face-to-face thing, and attempting to provide value in those conversations, as well as show a connection, show interest.
Yeah, thank you for expanding on that. That makes a lot of sense. What do you plan to do differently within your business next year?
We spoke about this value of connection, and with the opportunity to meet in person more, which I've rarely done in coaching since that 1.5 start time, I would like to pull together and give people an opportunity to connect with their peers with the facilitation of executive coach through coaching circles or roundtables, CEO roundtables. Those are options for 23. And I am working on another idea, also a in-person executive retreat with a goal to face the fact that people are burned out and tired, and make restoration and adventure a part of it. So executive coaching principles and conversations, but working from some local here in the Shenandoah Valley, there's lots of places to get out and into nature. And so I have a partner who is an adventure guide, and will weave in adventures, whitewater rafting, spelunking, rappelling, to that kind of thing. And if people want to do it, I think it would be a really unique and super fun way to experience executive coaching and self-development, and maybe get some of their wind back in their sails.
That sounds really exciting, Ken. I am thrilled to hear some of your ideas for what you're planning in 2023. There's so much more that I could ask you, but we've received a lot of value already, and your time, as we have heard, is quite valuable. So I just want to thank you, Ken, for spending this time with us and helping to just share about what's working for you and what you're doing within your business. It's been very helpful today.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure, and it's great to reflect together.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.